Good.
Let me ask you.
So there were some motions this morning as well. So that's what I'm looking for. There we go. Ooh, good.
Here?
What kind of paperwork?
Okay, good. All right, so the order I'd like to do is, Mr. Jackson, yesterday you were going to take a look at any photographs you intend to put in with Dr. LaPasada? All right, can I just, are you all in agreement or are you just looking at them now, Mr. Brennan?
Obviously, we're not at this juncture, so we're not going to bring it in.
Yep.
Clause in this issue is that information that we are going to bring in exactly what we mentioned yesterday. If there's an issue with, for instance, the ecdymosis, we've got a clean copy of the photograph without any of the narrative next to it. The only one I think that says that which is bringing in yesterday.
All right. So I need to know just for instructions to the jury about, I'm concerned about the photograph on page 5, figure 3.
I wish that was the way it turned out, though. It's not.
So what I would like you to do, if you could, is just crop the center that shows what appears to be blood cells, or the red. I assume that that's the part you want to get into? Sure. If you can crop that, I'll let it in, and I still want to give an instruction. So I need to know what you're going to do with that.
It was with our Nana.
I was going to exclude it, but I understand. So if you can crop, yes, if you can do that, I think it takes away some of the sting on the gruesome photographs. All right, so you'll do just the brainstem on that, Mr. Jackson? All right. And so I'm concerned more about ones that I think may cause the jurors some concern. So the photograph, figure 5, the Wisniewski spots, I thought that was in evidence. I don't know for sure if it's in evidence.
We went back and forth yesterday, and I don't know.
No spoilers, please.
Okay, so, okay.
Yeah, I agree. She didn't do it.
All right, they've already seen it, so it's less likely to have an impact on them for purposes of the gruesome photographs. But and then on page 8, figure 6, the stomach lining.
How are you?
Correct, that's already in evidence.
Okay, that's what I thought, Tori, you told me yesterday, the number, right? So those are in. So are you using them again?
Thank you.
I'll be using it again comparatively, probably side by side.
Okay. All right, I don't have a problem with that. Does the Commonwealth? Okay. All right. Those are the ones I was concerned about for purposes of an instruction. If there's objections to hearsay or something, I'll give Mr. Brennan an opportunity to take a look at whatever he's got. Okay.
Because he needs all the opportunities.
So with that, that's helpful. Thank you. So there is a new motion this morning suggesting that the Commonwealth open the door
out of the fridge, please?
with their questioning of Dr. Russell to allow Dr. LaPasada to talk about bite wounds. So I've read that. Okay, sure.
I'd like to start, if I may, by marking 2 documents. One is Dr. LaPasada's entire report, the second is
great.
her entire CD.
Okay. Yeah, those are the ones I needed from yesterday. So, yes.
Not that one. No, I know who Paul O'Keefe is. That wasn't who I was talking about.
Yes.
Exhibits D, 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 and exhibits E, 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 E.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor. We are asking the court to reconsider the court's ruling yesterday concerning Dr. La Posada and her ability to opine on the issue of dog bite and claw mark wounds and pattern recognition. We had some concerns yesterday and previous to yesterday about an issue that has been ongoing with the Commonwealth, and we've brought this to the court's attention. The Commonwealth has been using a tactic to shift the burden to the defense with cross-examination that's laced with indications or implications about witnesses that may or may not be called by the defense. That is a problem. I brought it to the court's attention at sidebar. The court will probably remember that colloquy. It was not an open court, but I expressed grave concerns, to use that phrase, that there was a
Motion hearing, Crystal.
burden-shifting system that was going on when Mr. Brennan is asking our
Nope, we
witnesses
just started.
about, or his witnesses, about other witnesses that may be
you.
on the defense witness list and may be called. Obviously, as the court knows, foundationally, we don't have to call anybody. We don't intend to call anybody. We don't have to call anybody, but we can call whoever we feel like. But we shouldn't be put in a position where our hand is forced to call witnesses because of questioning by the Commonwealth, which is improper. After I brought it to the court's attention, Mr. Brennan has continued along that same line. The Commonwealth has continued along that same line, and I want to bring something to the court's attention specifically. Last night, we pulled the tape. Dr. Russell was cross-examined by Mr. Brennan on the issue, specifically, of Dr. La Posada and her opinions regarding dog bites. He asked questions over and over and over again. The colloquy probably lasted more than 5, 6, 7 minutes with Dr. Russell, specifically on the issue of whether or not she had seen Dr. La Posada's reports, whether she was aware of Dr. La Posada's opinions, implying that Dr. La Posada had opinions about the dog bites. She was asked if she was familiar with Dr. La Posada's credentials. Dr. Russell said, yes, she was familiar with Dr. La Posada by name, that she thought she had impeccable credentials, and she very much wished she could have seen her reports as it relates to dog bites. It was an intellectual curiosity by Dr. Russell that was evoked and elicited by Mr. Brennan on cross-examination of Dr. Russell.
Yeah.
She was then asked the seminal question, did the defense, Dr. Russell, give you any reports by Dr. La Posada related to dog bites?
Lemons.
And the transcript?
Hi, guys. Good morning.
Oh, my motion's back.
Sorry, Aaron's going to the store really quick, so he was asking me about our grocery list.
Does the court have it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Bev lives in the world of denial. I
I
don't know how she's still on the bench, honestly.
I'll just read it. Question by Mr. Brennan to Dr. Russell. And so you think of all those forensic pathologists, medical examiners, you think that qualification and experience itself is not enough to qualify someone to give an opinion on a photograph about the genesis of a wound related to dog bites?
This is the motion about Dr. Empanat. I can never say her name. It's about her mentioning dog bites. They're again putting in a motion to try to change Bev's mind.
Answer. Well, if a forensic pathologist autopsied 1 or 2 cases of dog bite wounds versus my experience with over 500 to 1,000 cases of dog bite wounds, I'm not sure that person would be a very good expert in that kind of case. Question by Mr. Brennan. Have you ever heard of a doctor named La Posada?
So are you
Yeah,
going to
that one.
read all 3 pages?
No.
So I've read it, Mr. Jackson.
I'd like to read it into the record, Your Honor.
It's in the record. I will put this transcript into the record. I'm not gonna let you read 3 pages here.
It's not 3 pages, Your Honor, it's about another 5 lines.
The
It just
part
goes to
that
the
you
top of the
brought
next
to
page.
my attention is on page 15, not where you're reading.
Colloquy between between Dr. Russell and Mr. Brennan was specific to dog bite wounds. It was specific to Dr. Russell's understanding of whether or not Dr. La Posada had been retained by the defense, whether she was a defense expert, whether she had written a report, and whether she opined about dog bites and dog bite wounds. And after she was asked if it had been provided any reports by the defense attorneys specifically.
Guys, we got a flash goal. We need 33 roses from 33 different people. So if you could send a rose, greatly appreciated.
From Dr. La Posada related to dog bite wounds, Dr. Russell said, no, I haven't been. And to summarize her statements, which the court has in front of it, Dr. Russell went on and said, I really wanted to see what Dr. La Posada had to say about these dog bite wounds. I really wanted to read her report, but no, I was never provided her report or reports by the defense. And of course, Your Honor, as the court knows, that is standard operating procedure. I don't trade reports between and among experts because obviously I want independent analysis. I don't want to cross-contaminate any opinions, etc., and be accused of doing so. So of course we didn't provide a report from Dr. La Posada to Dr. Russell. But Dr. Russell's intellectual curiosity was then extracted from the witness stand, and the jurors heard all of that. So then days later, not weeks, not months, 3 days later, after eliciting testimony from Dr. Russell about Dr. La Posada having a report, being hired by the defense on the issue of dog bites, and not providing that report to Dr. Russell, the Commonwealth then moves to exclude the very testimony that he was eliciting from Dr. Russell, leaving the jurors with a very, very deep and irremediable misimpression. They used it tactically as a sword and a shield, and that's burden shifting. That leaves the jury with the impression that Dr. La Posada was consulted by the defense, number one, that she wrote a report, number two, that the report was about dog bites, number three, that she didn't provide that report to other experts, number four, and the reason she didn't, obviously, is because her opinion, Dr. La Posada's opinion, would be harmful to the defense. That's the only reasonable interpretation of those facts.
Guys, if you're just coming in, our flash goal is roses. So we need a total of 33 roses from 33 different people.
And the Commonwealth has taken advantage of that. The Commonwealth's questioning of Dr. Russell about Dr. La Posada and her report and her opinions about dog bite wounds specifically was deliberate, and it left the jury with an open question. We know they consulted her. We know it was about dog bites. This is how the jurors are thinking about it now. We know they consulted her. We know it was about dog bites. They hid the report from Dr. Russell because they didn't want her to know about it. Ergo,
thank you, Luna.
Must be harmful to defense. Now we've got Dr. La Posada on the stand. Her credentials are peerless, absolutely peerless. They've got possibly the most qualified medical examiner in the country, certainly on the Eastern Seaboard, right in front of them, about 6 feet away, and the defense is not going to ask a single question about her opinions concerning dog bites when she reviewed the entire autopsy. How is the jury going to conceive that? How is that going to land with them? The answer is they're going to think, they have no choice but to think, the only reasonable explanation is, if Dr. La Posada's opinion helped the defense, they would ask her. If they don't ask her, it's because whatever Dr. La Posada says about that right arm and those wounds, it's got to be harmful to the defense. They would absolutely ask the question. So the Commonwealth got to have it both ways. They got to ask Dr. Russell about Dr. La Posada and imply that Dr. La Posada had opinions about dog bite wounds. And then they have it the other way, which is, let's ask the court if she will exclude Dr. La Posada from testifying about the very issue that they brought up in front of Dr. Russell. That cannot stand. That it reasonably ensures.
We just started. He is arguing a motion to try to get Dr. Empanada's dog bite theory in again. You're not super late. We're just a few minutes in.
That the jury will misrepresent or misunderstand
You're welcome.
the import of why we're not asking Dr. La Posada about her expert opinion.
La Posada. I'll get that right one of these times.
It specifically pertains to dog bite wounds. I want to talk for just a second.
La Posada. Yeah. Let me
And that
write
has,
that
by the way,
down.
that has constitutional implications. Ms. Reed is entitled to a fair trial. Not a fair trial that the Commonwealth designs. Not a fair trial that the Commonwealth curates, but a fair trial. Regarding Dr. La Posada's credentials, we went back through, specific to the court's questions yesterday, her resume. There are no fewer than 13 classes, 13, that she has taught specific to wound pattern recognition that have
agree.
included dog bite recognition.
Me too,
On page
Cassie.
7, she was the course director for medical legal death investigation. I was in 2013. She taught about dog bite recognition in that case, or in that course.
Thank you, Lisa.
She's a thesis advisor for Master of Science Graduate Medical School, Boston University School of Medicine. Taught about dog bites.
To be crystal clear, this woman might even be overqualified for it. So how they're going to say she's not qualified to speak on it is BS.
Staying with page 7. Forensic pathology, course director in pathology. Course 205. Taught about dog
Thank you,
bites.
Catnip.
Member of Quality Assurance Committee, Training Division of Trauma and Surgical Critical Care, teaching on the issue of wound recognition, animal bites, and specific to dog bites.
Yeah, no spoilers.
Pediatric Forensic Pathology, Texas Homicide Symposium. She was a presenter in 1989. She taught about the issue of dog bites as it relates to pediatrics, children, dog bites in children. Forensic aspects of physical child abuse as related to being left with dogs that can injure a child, dog bites, dog bite recognition. These are all classes taught by Dr. La Posada on the issue of dog bites to other medical professionals.
Maybe, you never know.
The one that stands out, however,
I
and I'm not
agree,
going to go through
Cassie.
the other 9 or 10 or 11. The one that stands out is 2015 and 2016. 2 courses. The name of the course, Emergency Room Forensics, Evidence and Patterned Injuries. New England chapter of the International Association of Forensic Nurses, taught in Norwood, Massachusetts, both times, specific to dog bites and the issue of dog bites as seen by emergency room physicians, how they should handle them, what they should do with them, how they should view them, what to look for in terms of pattern recognition. She's eminently qualified. I will leave the court with one thought. The court indicated when qualifying Dr. Russell, one of the preeminent things that the court mentioned in qualifying Dr. Russell is that Dr. Russell utilized.
We still need 14 more roses, guys, from 14 people who haven't already sent them. So if you've got one coin and you could help us out, we want to hit our 29th goal today.
A methodology
Thank you.
that the court sanctioned
Hey.
and quoted and said the methodology that she used of wound pattern recognition, dealing with differential diagnosis,
Thanks, guys.
utilizing and interpreting dog bites by the method of exactly what Dr. Russell did.
Good
Differential diagnosis is something that the court said was exactly why the court sanctioned Dr. Russell
Don't worry
and
about it.
blessed Dr. Russell as a qualified expert. And that's exactly what Dr. La Posada testified yesterday she utilized and utilizes in coming to her opinions and conclusions. Going back to the open door issue, obviously she's eminently qualified, but Your Honor, this cannot stand. The Commonwealth cannot have it both ways. They cannot walk up and say, and leave the impression with the jurors that Dr. La Posada opined about the dog wounds, but we're not able to hear it. We, the jurors, are not able to hear it because obviously that is something that is her opinion, whatever it might be, is harmful to the defense. When in truth and in fact, it's exactly the opposite. Dr. La Posada's opinion has never wavered. Those injuries on John O'Keefe's arm are from a dog, period, full stop. Anything less than presenting that to the jury at this point would be to perpetrate an intentional fraud on this jury. Ms. Reed
Which is what Hank did in the beginning in his opening statements when he said, you're going to hear a recording where she says, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. That's why he's on the Brady list.
is entitled to more. She's entitled to better. She's entitled to the evidence.
All right.
There's a lot, Jess. A lot. We only need a few more roses, guys. Let's knock this one
The
out.
pattern of conduct that stands out is persistent, repetitive, contrary to court rulings and court orders, and deliberate. And that is the defense uses their witnesses to vouch for their own credibility. They use their witnesses to introduce information they know is not admissible. And they use their witnesses to introduce otherwise inadmissible hearsay.
I think you're
Dr. Russell
deflecting.
took the stand, and she was led into answers where she was vouching for her own credibility. Dr. Russell promoted herself not only as an expert, but through the defense's questions as virtually...
Who will be the final two? The final two roses. Who will they come from? Yeah, he's totally talking about himself, in my opinion. 100% talking about himself. Who will be the final two roses? The ones that make sure we lock in Flash Gold 29.
the only expert in America who has the expertise
Thanks,
to
guys.
give
I
this type
appreciate
of
it.
opinion. It is the defendant's tactics that open these doors that they then want closed. The defense had
Good job,
Dr.
guys.
Russell all but assure the jury that she uniquely was in the position to give any type of opinion regarding dog bites.
No, she did not.
Inevitably, when I asked Dr. Russell, and I began asking her about her credentials, whether she thought that she was exclusive, and I mentioned Dr. LaPosada, she denied ever reading anything about Dr. LaPosada. I did not specify whether she read an opinion about a dog bite. I asked if she had heard about Dr. LaPosada. She denied it. And then she told us that she knew about Dr. Sheridan. Unsolicited, then added that Dr. Sheridan, involved in a previous proceeding, believed that the bites were consistent with dog bites. I don't know how she became aware of Dr. Sheridan's testimony, and since the defense doesn't speak to her about these things, she must have watched it on her own. But inevitably, she introduced inadmissible hearsay and inadmissible opinions.
The hell?
And so the sum zero here is that Dr. Russell has denied that she saw anything relative to Dr. LaPosada, ensured that she was exclusively qualified, and introduced an improper opinion.
The devil froze him. The devil said, I've heard enough, I'm going to freeze him. I didn't freeze him.
As it pertains
Oh,
to
never mind.
dog bites. We asked her questions about her specific experience. She did not provide a basis. And so her opinions regarding dog bites should not be permitted in this trial.
I did redo his sticker so we could tell who the devil is in that sticker.
Stand out about
Tell me what you guys think.
that speech. Mr. Brennan literally just said, I didn't elicit any information about dog bites. I just asked about her experience. Question by Mr. Brennan.
That's not what I said. That is
Excuse
not
me.
No, I'm not going to.
So I heard what Mr. Brennan said. You don't need to tell me what Mr. Brennan said, but go ahead to
How
your
about if I quote
argument.
his
That was really unprofessional. That is not what you do. Like, the definition of unprofessional just happened. Hank, you do not interrupt another attorney when they're speaking. You don't do that. And then you say, no, I'm not going to stop. He's a man-child. Can we put him in a big-ass diaper?
words? How about that? Question. And so you think of all those forensic pathologists, medical examiners, and you think qualification and experience.
I paused because Taylor, yes. If you guys haven't seen it, yes, Bev is talking into her smartwatch. If you haven't seen it, look for it. Hold on, something just happened with my kids. I'll be right back.
Itself is not enough to qualify somebody to give an opinion on a photograph about the genesis of a wound related to dog bites.
What?
The question was specific to dog bites. That's how he introduced the subject matter to Dr. Russell. Then his next question was, have you ever heard of a doctor named Dr. La Posada? Those were his words. Then he goes on, I think he also just said that he did not elicit information about other individuals, including Dr. Sheridan or anybody else. Question by Mr. Brennan. Were you ever told what other people's opinions might be regarding those photographs? That's the question that she was answering when she said, quote, I'm aware that there was a Dr. Sheridan involved in a previous proceeding, and he believed that those were consistent with dog bites. That was in relation or in response to Mr. Brennan's specific question. She didn't just elicit that. She didn't volunteer it. She said it because he asked her. And that was all by design. The entire thing has been by design. He elicited the information suggesting that Dr. La Posada was being hidden from Dr. Russell because her opinion would harm the defense. He left that with her on purpose, then turned around and 3 days later said, and by the way, the defense should be disallowed from using Dr. La Posada to talk about the very dog bite wounds that I asked Dr. Russell about. That cannot stand in this court.
Go ahead.
It's helpful if you read the entire thing with context, which I will do. We always have a right to object
Good
to
morning.
a small opinion. So the suggestion that somehow an ambush here is not only misplaced, it's strategic by the defense to try to create a narrative. It's improper.
All right. I'll be out in 10 minutes on this and we'll get started right away with Dr. La Posada.
All right, report, please.
He loves to use that word ambush. Hi, Kath. How are you? You know, me and Aaron were talking about that earlier. Who she leaves. We know she's got to leave to call somebody, right? We all know she can make those calls from the bench too on her smartwatch. She got to go call the Alberts, Aaron says.
Testify regarding dog bites. So I'm not going to allow Dr. La Posada to testify regarding dog bites. Your rights are saved. I'm going to give an instruction.
The audacity of her to say your rights are saved after she says I'm not going to allow the professional who has plenty of experience to testify about dog bites, but your rights are saved. In whose eyes, Bev? Whose? Because I can tell you 163 eyes right here say no.
Regarding burden shifting. So,
I just think it's outrageous. I think the conduct is outrageous. And I don't think that the curative instruction can do anything except bring the point home again.
okay.
But if the court is not willing to allow her to testify to her full opinion to immediately can she at least testify that she reviewed the arm, looked at the arm, that it's consistent with an animal? And at least split the baby.
I will do that. I'll allow that. Yes.
If that doesn't tell us why you're so biased, I don't know what will. We cannot say it was a dog, but we could say it was an animal. You guys feel that too? She's specifically protecting Chloe Cora and the Ty of the Alberts by not letting them say specifically a dog, but it's an animal. It's an animal.
Almost objection.
And I hope to have the cross-examiner, because if you want to allow consistent opinion with the dog.
Nope, Mr. Jackson said animal.
I'll leave it at animal if that's what I can get. I'll take what I can get.
In her experience, Mr. Jackson, you have to lay a foundation. In her experience, saying animal bites, this is consistent with what she has seen in an animal bite.
And that will include, I'll come to sidebar before I display anything, that will include a representation of what an animal jaw looks like.
No, it will not.
Why is that?
That's my ruling, Mr. Jackson.
So no visuals.
No visuals, just that one sentence that's consistent with what she has seen.
I will
It's an animal bite. a brief foundation, because I'm letting that statement in, as long as she has said, as long as she testifies that she has seen animal bites over the years. That's it, Mr. Brennan. That's what I'm doing. So you don't want an instruction, Mr. Jackson? Okay. All right.
Let's hope the jury
So
can
there are
put
two other
the two
quick matters,
together.
but the jury's been here, and I don't think we'll get past the break without.
Already worrying
this
about your
anyway. I may
weight
have
claws,
left it in
Bev.
I left it in my office anyway, so let's just bring the jurors in and move forward with this. All right, Paul, I'm just going to.
All right, please.
I cannot with her. Can you imagine being Karen going through 2 trials with this judge who refuses to recuse herself, saying there's no bias? How about the fact that your brother represents Chris Albert and did in 94 and only got him 6 months in prison for unaliving somebody? I mean, that's just one, but hey, who am I to know, you know?
Sort of streamline things for you. So I do have those questions I have to ask you. Was everyone able to follow my instructions and refrain from discussing this case with anyone since we left yesterday? Everyone said yes or nodded affirmatively. Were you also able to follow the instructions and refrain from doing any independent research or investigation into this case? Everyone said yes or nodded affirmatively. Did anyone happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case since we left yesterday? Everyone said no. All right, can we have Dr. Laposada back, please?
This woman makes me feel rage, I'm telling you. Rage. Let's hope the jurors remember that Hank brought up dog bite. Because when they say animal and they're not specific, I think we all are developing serious anger issues here.
Doctor, I'll remind you you're still under oath. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Dr.
Morning, Your Honor.
Right? Same. And I haven't been sleeping well since this trial. No. I saw one of you type that. Guys, I redid Hank's sticker. Let me know your thoughts. If you want me to change it again, just let me know.
All right, Mr. Jackson, go right ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr.
She said no, she wasn't going to allow it, but then AJ argued a little bit, and they met in the middle with saying animal bites. Cannot say dog, but you can say animal.
Laposada, nice to see you again.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Yesterday, when we last left off, we were talking about
Welcome.
a small injury to the upper eyelid of Mr. O'Keefe. Do you recall that?
I do.
Can we have Exhibit 165 with the court's permission, please?
Okay.
This is going to have to be, I have to pay
I'd
attention to
like you
make
to
sure.
take a look at
Pull it down.
a specific area. I could.
Okay. Let me know when so I can screen record.
Right here on this exhibit. You see that area?
Yes, I do.
Tell us what that is.
And that is a horizontal splitting of the skin, which was caused by application of force that overcame the tissue's resistance, so the tissue split. And behind that, we see the raccoonite discoloration of the eyelid from the basilar skull fractures.
Can we have Exhibit 13, please?
Another interesting fact, the jury hasn't seen all the autopsy photos. Keep that in mind.
I want to draw your attention to this area of the vehicle. First of all, do you recognize
Oh, that's the
this photograph?
vehicle.
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize that photograph?
I recognize it from looking at it in my materials reviewed, that it's the rear of Miss Reed's SUV.
Taking a look at the area that I'm highlighting, right about there.
Yes.
Could we zoom in on that area? Do you see that overhang over the window?
Yes, I do.
If I use the word spoiler, would you understand what I'm talking about? Call that a
Yes,
spoiler?
yes, I do.
Okay. Is the laceration to Mr. O'Keefe's upper eyelid that we just looked at, is that consistent in your opinion with a strike from that area of the vehicle if that vehicle were traveling in reverse at say 20 plus miles per hour?
No, that rounded thick area would not cause that skin defect in his upper eyelid.
If in fact a person were hit at say 20 plus miles an hour in the face with that rounded edge, what kind of what kind of injury would you expect to see on that person's face?
I would think
I would
Karen.
expect to see a ribbon of bruise that would correspond to the height of that spoiler, and it would go across the eyeball, it would hit the nose. So I would expect to see some horizontal ribbon of bruise.
Did you see anything consistent with that, with Mr. O'Keefe's injuries?
No, nothing.
Thank you.
No,
Take
that's
that
the
down.
witness.
We talked yesterday about
Spoilers,
this
yes.
phenomenon known as coup contra coup injury to the brain, correct?
Yes.
I.e., if you saw something 5 minutes before we see it, don't say it.
What happens to the brain after a coup contra coup, a significant coup contra coup injury?
Yes, this was quite a severe brain injury. Was injured on the back of the brain and also the front of the brain. The falling back and
Trigger
impacting
warning,
the back
guys.
of the head made the skull fracture radiate along the base of the brain on the right and left sides. It also radiated around on the side of the skull, and that indicates a tremendous transfer of force and energy to the skull and then to the brain. And the brain is rattled around, therefore, within the cerebral spinal fluid in the skull. So what that does is that it breaks the connections between the neurons in the brain and causes small little hemorrhages, and it causes the brain to swell. So when you get an injury, like if you get an injury on your arm, it starts to swell. The same thing happens when that injury energy is applied to the brain. The brain starts to swell. And unfortunately, the brain, when it swells, it doesn't have anywhere to go because it's encased in the skull. So what happens is that the brain stem under the brain starts to go down the opening in the base of the skull where your spinal cord goes. And that is a harbinger of death, because that means that the brain stem is getting pushed down in this hole in the skull and compressing the areas in the brain stem which control the heartbeat and breathing. And that's called brainstem herniation, and that you just die after that. So that's what happened to Mr. O'Keefe's brain.
Have Dr. Pradhan to approach with.
Yes.
Doctor, can you take a look at that document that I just
She was. I don't know if she still
Tell me
is.
if you recognize it.
Yes, I recognize this.
How do you recognize that document?
From looking at the autopsy photos of Mr. O'Keefe's brain.
And what portion of the brain are you looking at?
This shows a photograph looking up under the brain, and it shows a cross section of the brainstem that went down in the hole in the base of the skull, and we see there's hemorrhage in it, and those have a special name. They're called Duret hemorrhages.
How do you spell that?
D-U-R-E-T with there's a little accent
Little
somewhere.
caret over the E?
Yes, and this shows that the brainstem is going down into the hole where the spinal cord goes. It's stretching the blood vessels and causes little hemorrhage and compresses the neurons in the brainstem, which control your heart rate and your respiration. It's called brainstem herniation, and that's a harbinger of immediate death.
Your Honor, with that, I would ask for the addition of that document is next in order, substitute.
So we'll take that into evidence. Yes.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, with the redaction, may I present the?
Not yet. 1 minute. Jurors, I told you before that there were photographs that have been introduced into evidence that aren't pleasant. And you may find that these photographs are graphic, and I'm instructing you again that your verdict must not in any way be influenced by the fact that these photographs, you'll see some more today, I believe, that have already been introduced into evidence. So your verdict must not in any way be influenced by the fact that these photographs may be unpleasant or graphic. The defendant's entitled to a verdict based solely on the evidence and not one based on pity or sympathy for the deceased, which might be occasioned by the photographs. Importantly, consider the photographs only as they may draw your attention to a clinical medical status or to the nature of Mr. O'Keefe's injuries themselves. So again, these will be presented to you in the deliberation room in an envelope. But today you'll see some on the screen, and I just wanted you to know that before you see it. So now you can display it.
Your Honor, may I approach very briefly?
Yes.
Keep in mind, the autopsy photos have never been seen in full. Not all of them.
If you wouldn't mind taking a look at that document.
Oh,
Is that
yes.
a redacted version or a version of just the brainstem?
Yes, this photograph shows the cross-section going this way of the brainstem with the hemorrhages caused by the brainstem going down into the foramen magnum.
With that, Your Honor, actually, I think with the court's permission, I would trade that as the next in order rather than the unredacted version.
All right, is there any objection to switching the exhibits like that?
No.
Okay.
Oh, and the arrows point to that on there.
So this is gonna be the next exhibit?
That'll be it.
Thank you. The other one will be ID for identification, the first one.
Thank you, Your Honor.
It was downright evil.
For ID.
I'll put it on my YouTube when we're done, but yeah, you did miss that part.
Okay, you can display it now.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Walt? Do you see what's displayed on the screen above your head?
Yes,
What is that?
excuse me, that's a cross-section across the brainstem of Mr. O'Keefe. And it shows where the blue arrows I've put in there show the red areas, which are areas of bleeding, which is the sign of brainstem herniation. All the background is white material, and that's part of the appearance of neurons in the brain. So that shows that the brainstem, because of the brain swelling, pushed it down into the hole in the base of the skull where the spinal cord goes, and it pulls on the blood vessels, causing the blood vessels to break and the blood vessels to bleed. And that shows you that the brainstem has been compressed and damaged, causing death.
May I approach?
Yes.
I'm holding a green laser pointer.
Oh, thank you.
Use the display.
See you soon, Ma.
Thank you. Could you point to the areas with that laser pointer of the bleeding that you indicated causes the swelling?
Okay, so, okay. Is that going on the?
It is. It's
Okay,
probably
thank
hard
you.
for you to see.
Oh, that's okay. So this sort of roundish thing is the brainstem, and the arrows are pointing to the red areas. So there's a blood vessel that's broken there because it's been torn and pulled with surrounding blood going into the neuronal tissue here and over here and over
Same.
here. So some of this is also bleeding with the blood looking brown because the brain was placed in formaldehyde. So all this brown area, the red area, should not be there.
Is this type of herniation life-threatening?
It causes death. Yes, it is life-threatening.
How quickly
Really?
can you take that down? How quickly, doctor, would you expect that this could cause, let's first talk about incapacitation.
Yes.
How quickly would someone be incapacitated after they suffer a coup contra coup injury of this magnitude with the concomitant injuries that you see in the brainstem?
Well, there would be two parts to what that injury would cause the body to do. First, there would be immediate unconsciousness because of the transfer of all the energy to the brain and the massive skull fractures. So that, excuse me, so that would disrupt the normal function of the brain and produce immediate unconsciousness. Then the brain would start to swell, and within 15, 20 minutes or so, then that brainstem starts to go down the opening in the bottom of the skull, and then the blood vessels are broken, the brainstem gets compressed, and the centers in that brainstem which control the heart and the respiration then stop. So you go unconscious, brain swells, then you die.
Turning to the actual, your review of the actual brain, in this instance, Mr. O'Keefe's injuries specifically, did you reach any conclusion or opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty about his incapacitation, the length of time it would take for him to become first incapacitated and ultimately to be rendered dead?
He would be immediately incapacitated with a decreased level of consciousness. Once he received that impact on the back of the head, he would not be able to make any purposeful movements. There might be some arm jerking or some seizure activity, but he would not be able to carry. He wouldn't be able to get up. He wouldn't be able to walk. He wouldn't be able to do any purposeful
Thank you,
activity.
Lizzie.
He would be severely concussed, unconscious, not able to walk, not able to carry out purposeful activity. And then as the brain continues swelling and that brain stem gets compressed, then the heartbeat is disrupted, the breathing is disrupted, and then those heart and breathing stop. And within 15 or 20 minutes, then he could be dead.
Is that opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes, it is.
You testified concerning wound pattern recognition pretty extensively during the course of your giving your qualifications. What is a patterned injury?
A patterned injury is very basic to the training in forensic pathology and medicine because it helps us understand some change on the body, some pattern injury that corresponds to the object that made it. So we can look at an injury and say, we can figure out what made that. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But a pattern injury is very important for a forensic pathologist to recognize because it's going to really help the police investigation. Because I can say, oh, this looks like it's a wound from scissors. This looks like it's a wound from a screwdriver stab. So by identifying the pattern that object makes on the body, I can help the death investigation by helping the police say, look for some screwdriver, look for some hammer. So looking at that, identifying a pattern injury is really important it's basic to the forensic pathologist's knowledge base, and then also very important to the investigation of the crime or incident.
I'd like you to look at another photograph, an exhibit that's already been put into evidence. 160, please. With the court's permission.
Yes, jurors, this may be one of the photographs as well. Right. Or there'll be a series.
Dr. Dr. LaPosada, I want to draw your attention to the center of this photograph.
Yes,
First of all, do you recognize what's depicted here?
yes, I do.
How do you recognize?
I recognize it from reviewing the autopsy photographs of Mr. O'Keefe.
You reviewed it
Yeah,
and forming
Cassie.
your opinions and conclusions?
Yes,
Can you describe what's depicted in this photograph? What are we looking at?
yes. So we're looking at the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head and an injury caused by the angular acceleration going down and hitting his head in the back. And then this is also a patterned injury. So what we see is the horizontal tear of the scalp, and we can see it's undermined a little bit. So that means the direction is going from bottom to top. Also, we see these sort of vertical lines in here and down below. So what that tells me is that the back of his head hit something that had a fine granular pattern to it to cause those individual little marks, and then also something that had a linear or ridged pattern that he went back on that broke the scalp there. So we have two parts really to this pattern injury. We have the horizontal tear of the scalp made by impact with some
Cassie.
sort of ridged surface. And then we have these vertical scraping of the skin above and also below. They're obscured a little bit by the ruler there, which says that whatever he hit had some little like granularity to it, with each little sort of granule making those vertical marks, and then the ridged pattern having the major
I
point
agree.
of impact.
What is the significance of the pattern when you say ridged pattern and there's two things we're looking at, the laceration?
Don't worry about it, Cassie. We rant several times a day here.
Or the abrasion versus the defect above and below that laceration.
Yeah, so what this injury tells me, or what I would tell the investigators, is that Mr. O'Keefe went back onto some object that has some sort of ridge to it to make that horizontal tear in the skin. But that ridge also had, it wasn't smooth. It had some little grainy grainy things sticking up on it that would make each of then these little things. And then it's the job of the police then to go back to the scene and look around for something which might fit that pattern.
We can take that down. Did you, in furtherance of your investigation, coming to your opinions and conclusions, look at the area of 34 Fairview?
Thank you,
The
Susan.
outside, yes,
Meaning photographs?
yes.
Did you also see photographs of any significance to you related to the garage, the interior of the garage?
Sustained. Jurors, disregard that comment, that question.
What part of the area did you see? What part of the location did you see?
I saw all the scene photographs taken by the police, which showed the front yard in the area where Mr. O'Keefe was found. I also saw some little grainy
I went back.
grainy things sticking up on it that would make each of then these little things. And then it's the job of the police then to go back to the scene and look around for something which might fit that pattern.
We can take that down. Did you, in furtherance of your investigation, coming to your opinions and conclusions, look at the area of 34 Fairview?
The outside, yes,
Meaning photographs?
yes.
Did you also see
He
photographs of any significance to you related to the garage, the interior of the garage?
Sustained. Jurors, disregard that comment, that question.
What part of the
Hi,
area did you
Crystal.
see? What part of the
How are you?
location did you see?
Good morning, Molly.
I saw all the scene photographs taken by the police, which showed the front yard in the area where Mr. O'Keefe was found. I also saw some photographs of the inside of the house and the inside of.
So I'm going to stop you there, Dr. Lapasada, jurors. I'm striking anything afterward, the pictures from outside, Mr. Jackson. Move on.
Let's stay with the outside of the home. Did
Yes.
you see the front lawn area?
Yes, I did.
How did you, what did you note about the front lawn area?
Well, I was looking at the area where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found, because we know once he came back and slammed his head, he's not going to get up and move around.
So, yes, I'm going to strike the second part of that. Just answer the question specifically.
Okay, I'll try.
Don't mention the inside of the house and don't mention a dog bite. Those are what we've learned so far today.
All right, Your Honor, thank you.
I never
Why were you
investigated it.
interested in the outside area where his body was found?
Because then I could identify an object possibly there that would have caused the injury on the back of his head.
Did you see any such object in any of the photos that you reviewed?
No, there was nothing there. It was a flat grass surface.
Would the flat grass, let's assume that the grass was very cold and very hard, the dirt was very cold and very hard. Would falling backward onto that dirt, hard or not, would that cause the patterned injury that you see, that we just saw in Exhibit 160?
No,
Why do you say that?
because if you fall back on a flat surface, you get many times the tear you get in the scalp can be more like a star, because you've just hit one part and then the tears go in kind of a star pattern. And also because you would not have those discrete vertical scraping of the skin. You would tend to, if you fell back on grass, you would tend to see, you might see grass in the wound, or you would tend to see an irregular kind of crisscross pattern of the flattened grass. And that's not what we have here on Mr. O'Keefe.
Do you have any training or experience in diagnosing hypothermia?
Thank you, Ripley.
Oh, yes.
Have you conducted autopsies of individuals who suffered from or died from hypothermia?
Yes, many.
How many?
100 or more, and then I've supervised my assistants who've also diagnosed the same death from decrease in body temperature.
Have you ever engaged in any death investigation, aside from the actual autopsies, death investigations in which the cause of death was deemed to be hypothermia?
Yes,
How many times would you say you've undertaken that type of investigation?
at least 100.
Have you ever reviewed any peer-reviewed medical literature associated with or discussing hypothermia and something known as Wisniewski spots?
Yes, that's in the medical literature and also in our forensic textbooks.
Did you review the medical examiner's file, Dr. Scortibello's file, as it related to, in connection with this case? You reviewed the entire file, correct?
I did.
Did you conduct a differential diagnosis as it relates to the potential for hypothermia?
Yes, I did.
Describe, before we get into your findings or your conclusions and opinions, what is inferential thinking?
Inferential thinking is another name for making a differential diagnosis. In other words, seeing a finding and then saying, how many ways can I get that finding? And then go and investigate each one of those ways and either rule them in or rule them out as being responsible to causing that finding.
Did you note whether or not the medical examiner, Dr. Scortibello, mentioned hypothermia as a potential cause of death in this case?
She did put that on the death certificate,
Along with something else?
along with the blunt force head injury.
Do you agree with or concur with the blunt force head injury
Yes,
as a cause of death?
yes, Mr. O'Keefe died from the blunt force head injury.
Do you concur with the diagnosis of hypothermia?
No, the body did not have any hypothermia.
What led you to that conclusion?
Well, when you have we know that normal body temperature is around 98, and we know that then at the hospital that Mr. O'Keefe's rectal temperature was around 80. So we know that his temperature went down. So there are two ways the body temperature can get down. It can get down while you're alive, or a dead body also cools when it's in a cold environment. So those are the two things you have to look at.
My eyebrows are weirding me out today. They don't look right.
Let me take a look. I'm
Show
sorry,
Mr.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yep, show Mr. Burlington.
Thank you. I apologize.
Yes,
Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
yes, I do.
What is that?
This is a photograph I took from our forensic medical literature, and it shows the lining of the stomach. So the stomach is opened up, and we look at the lining of the stomach, and it shows a characteristic pattern of small ulcerations throughout the stomach, which are called medically Wisniewski's ulcers. And that allows a forensic pathologist to diagnose death from being exposed to a cold environment or death due to hypothermia. And they're caused by, as the body gets colder and colder when it's alive, these small blood vessels in the lining of the stomach, they start to break, and then they're in the acidic environment of the stomach, and you get tiny little ulcers, which then look like small dots. And that is how at postmortem examination or autopsy, it's one of the findings I look for to see if a person died from hypothermia.
Doctor, what is gastric mucosa as it relates to stomach lining?
The gastric mucosa, when you open up the stomach and you look at the inside, the first cells lining that inside is called the mucosa.
Thanks for
Is
the
that what we're
follow.
looking at in this photograph or no?
Yes, we're looking at the mucosa with ulcerations, which are little craters that form in it due to hypothermia.
Is that exemplar of what Wisniewski spots looks like as it relates to hypothermia from a book that is, or literature that is peer reviewed?
Oh, yes.
Is it widely accepted in the medical field?
Yes, it is.
And is it referenced by forensic pathologists and used in teaching?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move for the admission of that photograph.
Okay.
So 226.
Permission to display, Your Honor?
Yes.
Is this a fair representation of what you were just looking at?
Yes.
Describe what we're looking at.
And so this, I took this photograph from our forensic medical literature, and this was from a person who died due to exposure to a cold environment. And this is the stomach has been opened, and we're looking at the inside of the stomach. And the normal appearance is kind of pinky white. That's how it should look like. And what's abnormal here is all these black dots, which are the Wisniewski's ulcers, which are diagnostic of death due to exposure to the cold. So these areas are little tiny craters, and they fill up with blood. And we see that in over 90% of the cases of people who die from exposure to the cold.
Doctor, did you also look at Mr. O'Keefe's stomach lining?
Yes, I did.
If we could have, with court's permission, Exhibit 164 put up as well.
Okay.
Do you see the photograph on the right?
Yes.
What is that of?
This is the Mr. O'Keefe's stomach, which has been opened up, and we're looking at the inside. We see that the mucosa is a little bit red, and there's a little bit of increased blood flow here.
It said that resets to the chat.
Pattern of the inside of the stomach is kind of ridged. That's called rugae. That's the normal folds inside the stomach. But there's no ulcerations here. So the diagnosis of death due to hypothermia is not appropriate in his case.
Did you see, or do you see, any classic Wisniewski spots in Mr. O'Keefe's stomach lining or gastric mucosa?
No, no,
Do you observe any ulcers specific to Mr. O'Keefe's stomach lining?
no, there are no ulcers. It's a normal appearance of what we would call a gross specimen. When you open the stomach at autopsy, you can see some redness of the normal lining of the stomach.
Did you,
Not long enough to
let me
get
ask this
hypothermia.
first. Do you have an opinion as to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty based on the totality of your review and examination of the autopsy and its associated file, an opinion as to whether or not Mr. O'Keefe died of hypothermia or complications related to hypothermia?
I do have an opinion.
And what is that opinion?
He did not die of hypothermia.
And is that opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes,
Taking a look at the darker red areas in the stomach lining of Mr. O'Keefe on the photograph to the right,
yes.
that's Exhibit 164, can you describe what those are? What are those darker areas?
Well, here we see a little bit of bleeding. The darker areas are the areas of the lining that are at the bottom of the normal rugae, because the inside surface of the stomach sort of looks like it's covered with little mountains. And so we can get the redness in between what the rugae and the stomach. And there's a little bit of increased redness here, but no ulceration.
Do you have an opinion, or were you able to form an opinion as to what the increased redness might be or is associated with?
Yes,
Did you note anything of significance in the rest of your examination of the file, the autopsy file, the medical examiner's file, that was related to what you see in the photograph 164?
yes.
All right, I see your sidebar for just a minute here.
We can take that down.
No, that was yesterday. That was yesterday's topic. And the defense didn't do anything wrong. That was the prosecutor. That was good old, and by good I mean bad, Mr. Brennan. He said there were holes in the shirt from when he was hit. He tried passing one. He tried getting one over on the defense. Yeah, that was the prosecution.
The sternum area
Yes.
of the body. That there was a machine that was used for life-saving measures as it related to Mr. O'Keefe.
Oh, yes, it caused some damage to the body.
Okay, let's talk about that for just a quick second. What is that machine called?
If you need to see it, I put that clip on my TikTok with all your guys' reactions to it, might I add? Which I need to stop because every time I do, I get reported on that. But if you want to see it happen, it's on my TikTok and my YouTube. But whichever. Oh, come on. The ghost is messing with us, you guys. No, that was prosecution.
It's a mechanical device to administer chest compressions. And the company that makes it is called Lucas, or one of the companies, so it's called a Lucas machine. And it can be attached to the body. Your arms go up over a ridge, and there's a plunger, and it goes around your back. And so it just plunges, and it does mechanical resuscitation and chest compression, compressing the chest right over the lower sternum, about 2 inches or so, and it's very helpful in
Good morning. You're supposed to be on vacation.
a situation where the manual compressions, where the attendants and the ERT people, they get tired continually compressing for a long period of time.
No, she's not. She's from Massachusetts, and the people paying for this are the people that live in Massachusetts.
So the mechanical device was
I know, honey.
invented to prevent the EMT fatigue when administering chest compressions.
When you mention the sternum area of
Yes.
the body, are there organs beneath the area that's being compressed by the mechanical Lucas machine?
Oh, absolutely.
What
Are
do
you
those
having a
organs
good time?
include?
Well, ideally they include the heart because that's what's supposed to be pumping the blood out, but it's also in a circular area that's right below the sternum, which includes the heart. But what is also under there is the esophagus and the interior of the stomach. So this area is right under where the machine is compressing as well, as long as, in addition to part of the head of the pancreas, which is also right there under the lower sternum. And what can happen with the Lucas machine pushing in for 100 times a minute for a depth of about 2 or 2.5 inches, that these organs right underneath of it get compressed between the Lucas pump and the bony vertebral bodies that's along your
Thank you,
back.
Vicky.
So you have the Lucas machine compressing these organs, and they're compressing them against the vertebral bodies of your bony vertebral column in the back. So you can get other injuries, organ injuries, that is a complication of the automated mechanical resuscitation. You can get cardiac ruptures, you can get ruptures of the liver, because all those organs are clustered right there, and that machine is pushing those organs in between the pump and the back of the bony spinal column.
Doctor, in your review of the medical records, was there any indication that an automated chest compression machine, a Lucas machine, was used on Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
May we can take this down?
Yes.
This trial is making my wrinkles like 20 times worse. I'm half tempted to just put frownies on while we're in court because I cannot stop my expressions. Oh, I'm so
Two
sorry.
documents that I'd like to show you first.
Yes.
That document, and then after you're finished.
If you want to step out for a bit,
First, we're gonna second.
definitely is not.
Yes.
Taking the first document that addresses the Lucas machine,
Yes.
how do you recognize that photo or those series of photos and graphs?
These are illustrations I put in my report,
How are you?
and one shows a generic patient with the
Thank you.
Lucas machine in place around him to do the chest compressions. Then I have a photograph of the actual apparatus of the Lucas machine itself. Then I show what's recognized as medical complications and
Pretty good.
injury from that machine. It shows, I have an example of a CAT scan of a section through the body horizontally, right where the plunger goes into the chest. And it shows in another patient hemorrhage around the pancreas and around the top of the stomach. Then I have a diagram also taken from our medical literature that shows the direction of force that compresses those organs between the resuscitation paddle and the vertebral body and the backbone.
Doctor, are those photographs and graphs taken from peer-reviewed literature in the medical field that's normally relied on by other medical professionals?
Yes.
No, I'd move for the admission of that first document.
Right, subject to redaction?
I don't think so. I think that one is not objected to.
Okay. All right, so would you hand
Oh,
that to?
sure, thank you.
If it wasn't, do you think that people would know about Karen Reed and what she's going through? Because if this could happen to her, it could happen to any single one of us. And if it wasn't televised, there's no one to hold them accountable. Thank you, Melbell.
exhibit 227.
Permission to display, Your Honor?
Yes.
Doctor, I know that's a little bit small and far away. We'll enlarge it as you need.
Okay.
It's not an eye test. Can you tell me what we're looking at now? Let's take the top half of the
Yeah.
document. What is that? To the left, and then what's the machine in the middle?
Okay, so what you see on the left is a anonymous patient showing how the Lucas machine is placed onto the patient, where the arms are pulled up and clasped against these rigid mechanical bridges. And then here is the engine which the pump, and that's the pump which just goes up and down to do the chest compressions. And so that's how it's affixed to a patient.
To be clear, Doctor, that is not Mr. O'Keefe. That is
No, this is
could be a model.
an unknown person.
Okay. And then what are we looking at in terms of the actual machine to the
Yeah,
right?
this shows the actual machine before it's put on a patient. You can see how it encircles the patient, and then there is this circular pump, which is the compressor pump.
If we can look at what is that a picture of the highlighted portion?
That's the circular part that actually is projected down onto the body.
That makes contact with the chest.
Correct, and it has a spring in there that
No, this shows injuries sustained by trying to save his life, but it's not John O'Keefe. This is not anybody. I think it's a mannequin, but it's an unknown person if not a mannequin.
engine above it gives a certain number of compressions per minute.
And you said on average the compressions per minute would be about what?
They should be around 100.
Okay. If we could go to the bottom half of the page of the,
Different theories by different doctors.
what are we looking at in this photograph?
And we're looking at, on the left side, we're looking at a CAT scan, which scans a person who's had some injury from the Lucas compression machine. And it's a cross section. So the arrow here is pointing to the head of the pancreas
Tap the
and the
screen,
area of
Josh.
the esophagus. And then the machine would compress down onto that. And the important part is that, I don't know if that's working on there, the little thing that looks like at the very bottom, it's circular and then has a little, looks like a little steer head. That's the vertebral column, and that's bone. And so the pump is pushing in that area where the arrow is pushing those organs against the bony vertebral column.
Yes, life-saving measures.
And that's on an actual patient that had that. Then on the right, it shows the schematic of the blue arrows indicating the force coming down. Then we see the organs, and the red arrows show how the pancreas can get hemorrhage, and also some of the esophagus that goes into the top part of the stomach. And we see that's, I can't really see where that, I think it's stopped.
May I approach you?
Yes.
Oh, no, you've got it. Okay. Okay. And then we see at the bottom with those three little things projecting from it, that is the vertebral body, which is made up of bone. So you can see how the chest compressions, not only, hoping to save the life by keeping the heart blood functioning, can also cause some injuries and damage, not life-threatening usually, to the other organs there.
We can take that down. Doctor, taking a look at the second document that's in front of you, do you recognize what's depicted in that document?
Yes.
What is that?
This is a picture of Mr. O'Keefe, his chest, while he's at the hospital, which shows a lot of the resuscitation equipment.
Is that a true and accurate depiction of the Mr. O'Keefe at the hospital based on your review of the medical file?
Yes.
I'll move for the admission of that.
Oh,
Exhibit 228.
They are, Taylor. Yes, that's what she's trying to explain, yeah.
Permission to display briefly.
Okay.
Taking a look at the photographs to the left and to the right, do you see any indication on Mr. O'Keefe's body that is suggestive that the Lucas machine, where the Lucas machine was situated?
yes, as I pointed out here with the blue arrows, that big circular mark there is the mark on the skin where the compression pump compressed the chest of Mr. O'Keefe. And it caused some rib fractures, and it also caused those reddening of the stomach and some hemorrhage in the pancreas.
We can take that down. Doctor, based on your review of the medical records, did you calculate the approximate number of compressions that Mr. O'Keefe would have been subject to based on that Lucas machine?
Yes.
What is that calculation?
His body was found around 6 a.m, and he got to the hospital around 6:37, I think. So if they put the Lucas machine on him, when they got him into the
Babe, will you close the door here for me?
ambulance, and it's compressing at 100 times a minute, and that is from the time of the body being
No,
discovered to the
yeah.
time at the hospital, that's around 37 minutes. So if you multiply 37 minutes times 100 compressions a minute, that's around, over 30,000 compressions that would have been done to Mr. O'Keefe's body in the course of his resuscitation efforts.
Doctor, do you have an opinion as to what caused the hemorrhaging that we saw on Mr. O'Keefe's stomach lining?
Yes.
What is that opinion?
It was from the blunt compression of the Lucas machine.
Is that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
You indicated earlier that there is a difference between someone dying of hypothermia or complications associated with hypothermia and a body that's already passed away just cooling, correct?
Correct.
Do you have an opinion as to a reasonable degree of medical certainty as to whether Mr. O'Keefe suffered from hypothermia?
I do have an opinion.
What is that opinion?
He did not experience hypothermia.
Did you observe any signs of frostbite
No.
that have any weight concerning your opinion, overall opinion as to whether Mr. O'Keefe died with complications associated with hypothermia?
Well, if someone dies due to exposure to low tempers, you expect to see not only the Wisniewski ulcers, but you expect to see some frostbite changes in the extremities.
Based on your overall review of the medical records associated with Mr. O'Keefe, were you able to reach an opinion and conclusion as to the cause of death of Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes,
What is that opinion?
he died of brain injuries and skull fractures due to blunt force trauma of the head.
Do you hold that opinion for Mr. O'Keefe's cause of death to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
I want to shift gears for a minute, Dr. LaPosada, and talk about patterned injuries elsewhere on Mr. O'Keefe's body. You've obviously talked about your training and experience as it relates to recognition of patterned wounds, correct?
Correct.
That's something that you were trained in when you were...
I want to make it abundantly clear. She has testified that hypothermia is not his cause of death.
training, correct?
Yes, it's very basic to the discipline of forensic pathology.
And have you also trained others during the course of your 40-year career on the issue of wound pattern recognition?
Yes.
You've taught courses and given lectures, is that right?
Yes, I have.
She gave what, in her medical opinion, is the cause of death, and it was those injuries to the head, the blunt force trauma, not hypothermia.
I'd like to show you Exhibit 167 with the court's permission.
Okay.
Do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
Yes.
How do you recognize it?
Is a photograph of the right arm of Mr. O'Keefe.
Did you review and consider this photograph and others in coming or forming your opinions, coming to your conclusions and opinions in this case?
Yes.
In order to come to your ultimate opinion and conclusion, or opinions and conclusions in this case, is it important to take all of the injuries that a decedent may have suffered into account rather than one or two piecemeal?
Now you have to look at the whole picture to understand what happened to the body.
Why is that? What's the importance of that? It may be obvious, but explain that for the jurors, please.
Well, there are, when you're looking at changes and injuries to the body and trying to understand what happened to the body, there are different patterns of injuries on different parts of the body. And by trying to separate those and understand what patterns were caused by certain things, then you're able to put together a sequence of events that happened to the body prior to death.
What role do photographs play in a forensic medical examiner reviewing the medical evidence and coming to opinions and conclusions? How important are photographs?
Oh, those are huge. It's standard practice to always document at the postmortem examination important findings with photography.
Were the photos in Mr. O'Keefe's case useful in coming to opinions and conclusions concerning his injuries altogether?
Yes.
What about the injuries to his right arm?
Yes, those photographs are very important to understand those injuries.
Do you believe that there is a patterned injury on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm?
Yes, there is a pattern injury there.
Have you ever seen, in your experience, either being taught or teaching, patterned injuries as they relate to animal wounds generally?
Oh, absolutely. Very common.
She's already went over this many times today. 80 degrees.
Do animal wounds include both claws and teeth, dentin?
Yes.
So bite marks and claw marks might be two different types of patterned wounds that you may see in your evaluation, just
Correct.
in general?
Correct, because when an
does
animal
not.
approaches the body, there may be damage from the claws and also from the mouth.
Do you expect to see punctate wounds as well as linear abrasions?
Yes.
Do you expect to see certain bite patterns as well?
Yes.
What types of injuries, let's talk about animals in general, what types of injuries do animals produce on the skin of human beings?
Well, animals can produce, if you're talking about, mammals, can produce injuries from their claws, where you get parallel scrapes of the skin from the claws applied to the skin, or you can see a pattern from the jaw configuration of the animal, and most
Hold on.
animals that attack or get in contact with the body have canines. So there's two canines on either side that make paired marks, and that would be called a pattern injury. So it makes parallel sort of gouges, and as the canines move in a horizontal pattern or a vertical pattern, the space between them can change. The other thing you see in a animal bite is you see not only the canines that come out, but depending on how the jaw is applied to the body, you can have little dot-like imprints in sort of a U-shaped pattern, which are from the incisors, the little incisors of the animal. So you look for punctures, you look for paired gouges, which would be the canines, and then you look for arced patterns of little dots, which can be the application of the incisors of an animal bite.
What is an incised wound?
An incised wound is a wound due to cutting from a sharp object.
Would you expect to see incised wounds from an animal bite or claw marks?
No, they don't cause, they're not like knife wounds.
Why do I feel like you're here to debate everything with me today? Like everything. She's the professional. She's testifying based on her medical experience. I'm going to believe her.
Cause more of a scraping injury.
Do you see the injuries that you're looking at in Exhibit 167, are these more consistent with incised wounds or the scraping abrasions that you just talked about?
Sustained.
Were you able to determine from your review of the medical records whether the injuries that you see on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm were pre-mortem or post-mortem?
They were, oh yes, I can determine that. They were inflicted prior to death.
Do you have an opinion as to whether or not the wounds that you see, the patterned injury that you see on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm is consistent with an animal bite or claw marks?
Yes, it is, very much.
Thank you. We can take that down.
Is everybody doing okay in the chat? Figure out, check in, see if you need anything. You at work already?
May I have just a moment, Your Honor? Actually, Your Honor, may we approach very briefly?
Okay.
I was like, I'm not going to kick your ass. Make sure you listen to this from the car. It's an important point. Aaron's going to work. He works until midnight, yeah. Okay, enough of this. Let's practice our patience with parameters.
Post-mortem.
Yes, Liz. 100%. 100%.
May I inquire?
Yes.
You indicated that, in your opinion, the wounds to Mr. O'Keefe's arms were pre-mortem, not post-mortem. His right arm, I should say, were pre-mortem, not post-mortem, correct?
Correct.
What's the basis for that opinion?
Well, a forensic pathologist has to be able to differentiate changes that happen to the body while the person is alive versus things that happen after the person is dead. For instance, there is something called post-mortem predation, where if the body is out in the woods and dead, then wolves and such can come and make, quote, injuries to the body. But we're able to tell from our training and experience that those were made after death. The usual way we tell is that when it's made during life, the blood vessels that are damaged, the heart's pumping blood through, so you can see a reddish color and maybe some blood around it. Whereas if the body is damaged after death, the changes to that body and those, quote, injuries look more yellowish and kind of brown because the blood is not flowing. So that's how you can tell if something done to the body is while the body was alive or whether it was done after death.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that the wounds on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm were pre-mortem?
Yes, they were done while he was alive. and bleeding.
You talked about death investigations. As a matter of fact, you mentioned something about what a forensic pathologist's role is in a death investigation to potentially send investigators back out to answer certain questions, correct?
Yes.
Did you see any evidence in the medical records or the medical examiner complete records that any effort was made to send investigators to the location to see if there were any animals at the location?
I have no way of telling when it's live. It doesn't show the time points. All I know, actually, I honestly just don't know. It doesn't show a timer at the bottom. I'm sorry.
At or around the time of John O'Keefe's death.
Sustained.
Do you believe it's important? Well, let me ask it a different way. Would following up with investigators be an important part of any forensic pathology investigation?
Oh, absolutely. You're working as a team to figure out what happened to the body.
Thank you. We talked about the theme and theory of differential diagnosis, correct?
Yes.
How does engaging in the process of differential diagnoses avoid bias in an investigation?
By after you have your findings and you sit back and think, well, how many ways could I get this finding? And so bias sometimes means, oh, I think it's this, and then you just stop. So that's a sort of a bias where you make a decision too quickly and you don't then stop to consider what other things could cause this same finding. So you have to consider not only what immediately comes to mind, but then you think, how else could we get this pattern of injuries?
Did you engage in a differential diagnosis as it relates to this case?
Yes.
Did you consider whether the injuries could have been caused by a motor vehicle accident?
I did consider that.
Did you consider whether Mr. O'Keefe's right arm injuries specifically could have been caused by being hit by a motor vehicle?
Yes, I did think about that.
Yes, Taylor.
Were you able to rule that out?
Absolutely. Not.
So the objection sustained, jurors strike that answer.
Tell me.
Did anybody miss that? Okay. Ready?
Oh, I think it's this, and then you just stop. So that's a sort of a bias where you make a decision too quickly and you don't then stop to consider what other things could cause this same finding. So you have to consider not only what immediately comes to mind, but then you think, how else could we get this pattern of injuries?
Did you engage in a differential diagnosis as it relates to this case?
Yes.
Did you consider whether the injuries could have been caused by a motor vehicle accident?
I did consider that.
Did you consider whether Mr. O'Keefe's right arm injuries specifically could have been caused by being hit by a motor vehicle?
Yes, I did think about that.
Were you able to rule that out?
Absolutely. Not.
So the objection sustained, jurors strike that answer.
Tell me about, well, let me ask it this way. Did you come to an opinion or conclusion as to whether or not Mr. O'Keefe's injuries as a whole were produced by a motor vehicle pedestrian incident?
Sustained.
You indicated that you...
The objection is to saying that the injuries on his arm were not caused by a motor vehicle accident. I swear to God, these people, I cannot with them. Oh no, I mean, you can't unhear those things. So what she said about it not being, who knows at this point why it's not allowed, because it argues everything that they put up. The jury most definitely heard that.
You've done thousands of autopsies yourself, correct?
Yes,
You've supervised many times more than that.
correct.
How many of those autopsies that you've performed or supervised have involved motor vehicle incidents?
You know, hundreds.
How many of those hundreds have involved motor vehicle pedestrian incidents?
Almost as many.
Have you performed autopsies specifically on
Right.
individuals known to be hit by vehicles?
Yes,
Have you performed autopsies on individuals believed to be hit by vehicles?
yes,
Have you engaged in differential diagnosis and inferential thinking in terms of developing an opinion or conclusion to a medical certainty about whether or not the injuries that you see on a decedent are consistent or inconsistent with a motor vehicle pedestrian incident?
yes, that's part of what we figure out as a forensic pathologist.
Did you
I want you guys to keep one thing in mind. If this wasn't televised, this would be happening to Karen, and there wouldn't be all these eyes on her right now. The eyes is the pressure. If this could happen to Karen, it could happen to any of us.
do that in this case?
Yes, I,
Sustained.
What are some of the injuries that you would expect generally
Thank
to
you.
exist if a pedestrian is hit by a motor vehicle at speed, not 1-2 miles an hour, let's say 20 plus miles an hour?
yes, one of the things you see is a pedestrian is, standing upright and is impacted by this blunt object of a automobile or a van or a SUV. And what you see first most is the tissue is crushed where the projections of the vehicle impact the tissue. And when you crush the tissue, that gives you a bruise. So that's the first part of the pattern of impact. It crushes the tissue, it gives you a bruise because it breaks
Me too.
the blood vessels underneath the skin. And then depending on how much more force is applied, the skin can break.
They did not.
So I'm going to strike that. Next question, Mr. Jackson.
In addition to bruising, what else might you expect to find in an individual who's been struck by a vehicle at speed?
So let's come over a second.
In case you guys were wondering, there has been 10 objections. How many did Bev sustain? 10. They are 10 for 10 with their objections. I'm going to be eating my cashew soon because if not, I'm going to say something that I probably shouldn't say. All of them. This is the guy I was asking who it is. This guy here. That's John's brother. I was asking who this guy was. How frustrating for these lawyers. I don't remember that being anything agreed upon that they couldn't say.
May I inquire?
Yes.
I forgot where I left off, so I'm just going to pick up.
Okay.
As best my memory can serve me. It has been suggested that Mr. O'Keefe's right arm, doctor, was injured by contact with the right rear taillight of Miss Reed's 2021 Lexus LX570.
Thank you, Connie.
No, I'm allowing that in.
Thank you. As Mr. O'Keefe, it was struck as Mr. O'Keefe was standing and the Lexus backed into him. That was a postulate put forward. I want to find out from you, do you agree with that?
Well, that's something to think of.
So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yes, I'm going to strike that question and answer.
I thought you said you were going to allow it.
Question. Do Mr. O'Keefe's pattern injuries on his right arm, do they correspond to injuries that
No,
could have
they
been produced by irregular fractured plastic pieces impacting his arm?
No, not at all.
Why do you say that?
First of all, those injuries are patterned injuries from an animal bite. We have the canines, we have the incisors.
All right, so I'm going to strike that, and let's see what sidebar.
She said that she was going to allow that one question, and then she recanted. She didn't say animal.
May I, Your
She
Honor?
said canine.
Yes.
In your report, Doctor, you indicated that Mr. O'Keefe's pattern injuries on his right arm do not correspond to injuries that could have been produced by irregular fractured plastic pieces impacting his arm. Do you recall putting that in your report?
Yes, I wrote that.
Do you stand by that?
Yes, that's my conclusion.
And you also wrote his arm had no tissue bruising from impact injury. Do you remember writing that?
Yes,
Do you stand by that?
I do.
You also wrote, neither did his skin show any array of irregular, unpredictable, randomly scattered cuts and scrapes at various angles and depths. Do you remember writing that?
I did.
And do you stand by that?
I do.
You also wrote that you noted Mr. O'Keefe had no bruising on his arms or torso. Is that right?
Correct.
And you also wrote, in particular, Mr. O'Keefe did not have bruises on his legs, correct?
Yes, correct.
And you indicated that that was shown by dissection of the leg tissue and muscle at autopsy. Is that right?
Yes, there was a special leg dissection done to look for bumper impacts.
You reviewed the entirety of the medical records associated with the autopsy,
Yes,
including photographs,
taken to the hospital, yes,
okay, and autopsy photographs,
yes,
and other data and documentation, correct?
yes.
Are x-rays an important part of an autopsy generally?
Oh, yes, usually there are x-rays taken of the body prior to the examination.
What do x-rays show? Why are those important?
They're important because they show foreign material in the body, like a bullet. They also image the skeleton, so we can look for fractures of the bones.
I think it's the canine that she's getting caught on. Because it's when she says canine.
I may have just one, Your Honor.
AJ came prepared. I know. We know that.
May I approach?
Okay.
She sure can. Shouldn't be able to, but yeah.
Yes.
Keep in mind, her brother, the lawyer for Chris Albert, he hit somebody and ended their life in 94. You're telling me that doesn't make a tie between the Alberts and her? I heard that too. but I believe the claim that's going around is that she's related to McCabe's. I just can't say one way or another. I don't know. Chris Albert was driving a vehicle, hit another vehicle, then fled. He left the scene of that crime, and that man passed away. He served 6 months in prison. That's it. For ending a life.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
On the court's bench, there's an item I'd like to treat back.
Miss, we need that marked for identification.
I need all three of them marked.
Okay, and we'll do that afterwards. Just please go ahead.
Do you see any x-rays?
I did.
What were the x-rays of?
The x-rays were taken of Mr. O'Keefe at the medical examiner's office, and they were x-rays of his chest, his arms, and his legs.
Did you specifically review x-rays of his right appendage, hand, forearm, arm?
Yes, they were included in the x-rays.
Have you seen x-rays before?
Oh, many times.
How many times?
Thousands, probably.
Is part of your job to review x-rays? To
Oh,
make a
absolutely.
determination of whether or not they indicate broken bones, fractures, hairline fractures, things of that nature?
Yes, it's part of the medical legal autopsy to study the x-rays of the deceased.
That's done in the ordinary course of being a forensic pathologist, is that right?
Yes,
Are you trained on how to read x-rays?
yes,
You have to be a radiologist to read an x-ray as a medical doctor?
no,
Medical doctors do
Thank
it
you.
all the time, correct?
yes, it's part of general medical training.
And is it also part of specialized training for forensic pathologists?
It falls under the rubric of general radiology that a doctor knows. There are some specialized areas in forensic where you have to understand like decompositional changes that you can see on an x-ray that aren't something that you would see in a clinical setting.
When you're taking the appendage one item
Thank
at a
you,
time,
Angie.
did you look at Mr. O'Keefe's x-rays of Mr. O'Keefe's right hand?
Yes,
Did you see any defect in the bones of the right hand?
no bony defects, and the tissue was normal.
Did you take a look at the x-ray of Mr. O'Keefe's right arm?
Yes,
Did you notice any defects at all in the bones in the right arm?
no, the bones in the right arm were intact.
No.
So you mean to tell us that going reverse 24 miles an hour, nothing happened to the bones in that arm?
Breaks,
Correct, no breaks.
fractures, hairline fractures?
No,
Did you look at the upper arm x-ray of Mr. O'Keefe?
yes,
Did you note any defects in the bone structure of Mr. O'Keefe's upper arm?
no, the bones were 100% intact.
No breaks, fractures, hairline fractures?
Correct, none of those.
Is there any indication in your mind, based on your review of those three x-rays, the hand, forearm, the arm, that that arm had suffered any kind of bone trauma at all?
Sustained.
Is there any indication, based on your review, or your expert opinion, that his arm had been broken, fractured?
No, the bones were intact, no breakage, no fractures.
I don't know, Colleen. I'm questioning that too.
Examination.
The devil's coming.
Good afternoon, Dr. La Posada.
6 minutes till the afternoon. Good afternoon.
That's okay.
That was cute.
You wrote a report in this case, doctor?
Yes, I did.
Do you think that based on your analysis, was Mr. O'Keefe thrust backwards? Is that what you determined looking at his head injury?
That he was, I didn't understand, you had your hand in front of your
Sure,
mouth.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
You talked about a head injury that Mr. O'Keefe had, that he
Yes.
suffered from,
yes,
that caused his death.
yes.
Was that caused by being thrust backwards?
Yeah, the motion was upwards, down.
Okay.
That's why she's our auntie.
And the way you just showed it could be a fall.
Correct.
Did you have an opinion looking at his wound that he was thrust backwards?
What do you mean thrust?
Well-
His body went backwards. There may have been some applied force to it.
I don't know about thrust. I'm asking if you have an opinion. Your words. Do you have an opinion about thrust?
What do you mean thrust?
Did the forensic pathology diagnosis mean Mr. O'Keefe's body was thrust backward?
If you want to say thrust as indicating movement, that it went backwards, then you could say it was thrust.
May I approach?
Yes.
That's not what he wants. He wants you to say that there was force that made him go backwards.
I'm showing you page 2 of your report, Dr. Laposada.
Yes.
I'm just going to ask you to read it, not out loud, and then I can ask you the question. But I want to
Yes.
take a look.
Yes.
Are you familiar with that?
No, absolutely.
You know what? That's a good one, Kat. Great point.
So, Dr. Laposada, what did you mean when you described that Mr. O'Keefe's body was thrust backward from a standing position?
I mean that he was standing upright and his body had momentum and went down and hit at the back of his head. So it was thrust backwards.
You cannot tell forensically how much momentum he had, can you?
No, we don't do those analyses.
If you can't tell if anything caused that momentum based on the head injury, can you?
Say dog bites.
What do you mean causative? It was caused by his body went backwards.
Auntie, we want you to say he went backwards when the dog jumped on him.
And so the amount of force causing him to go backwards, that's not something you could determine from the head wound, is it?
No, I can't tell you the amount of force. It was significant because he had the massive skull fractures.
Did you say it would be significant?
Yes, significant force.
It would be Hank
In
opening the
modern
door.
medicine, there are a number of different machines that can help us see the brain, like a CAT scan, perhaps,
Sure.
MRIs.
Yes.
Would you agree with modern medicine that the use of MRIs and CAT scans and other tools give a clinician equal, if not better, opportunity to examine the brain as actually cutting it and holding it in your hand?
No, the actual gold standard is the pathology, to be able to have the brain in your hand, look at it with your naked eye. And we have conferences in the hospital where we meet with radiologists and say what we find at autopsy and see if their radiology was correct.
You know who she'd get along really well with? Dr. House.
Can CAT scans and MRIs show contusions on the brain,
Well, they might.
subdermal hemorrhages,
Subdural hemorrhages. Yes, they can.
herniations?
They can.
She just corrected him.
Do you have any doubt about the modern medicine and the
Me
use
too.
of MRIs and CAT scans? Do you think they're inadequate in any way?
Well, I'm not a clinician, so I don't use those to diagnose diseases in living patients.
Dr. Laposada, have you ever had any experience studying the brain in real time, clinically, going and opening somebody's skull and treating the injury before the person dies?
No, I'm not a
The hell?
neurosurgeon.
You don't have any neurological expertise, do you?
I'm not a neurologist. I'm not a neurosurgeon. I'm a forensic pathologist.
Do you have any clinical experience at all where there's an acute head injury and you're making an effort to observe it and analyze the injury as it progresses in an attempt to save the person's life?
I don't treat or diagnose living patients.
I understand, but I'm,
Is he implying that she holds someone's brain in her hands while they're still living? I cannot with this.
as far as your background, have you ever had any experience, clinical experience, showing the progress of an actual brain injury and trying to treat it?
I understand the physiology of what happens to the brain when it is impacted by something, whether it be a bullet, a boulder, a fall. So I know what happens to the body to cause the changes from that
Very
trauma.
common.
I don't treat people for those injuries.
In observing a brain that's in trauma and making determinations of how long it's viable or whether the person will expire, do you know the process that a neurosurgeon would go through in order to fight to preserve the person or save the person? Do you know the step-by-step process that they would undertake
To do what?
to try to operate or save somebody from a head injury, from a brain injury?
Relevancy?
I'm going to allow it because of prior testimony.
Of course you
Well,
are.
it depends on what the brain injury is. If you have head injury and you have bleeding on the brain that's pushing the brain one way or the other, it would be a subdural. Then a neurosurgeon would come in
You need me to roll it back?
and try to take that blood away. So
In trying to treat it.
I understand the physiology of what happens to the brain when it is impacted by something,
Why this evenings? I'm here right now.
whether it be a bullet, a boulder, a fall. So I know what happens to the body to cause the changes from that trauma. I don't treat people for those injuries.
In observing a brain that's in trauma and making determinations of how long it's viable or whether the person will expire, do you know the process that a neurosurgeon would go through in order to fight to preserve the person or save the person? Do you know the step-by-step process that they would undertake
To do what?
to try to operate or save somebody from a head injury, from a brain injury?
I'm going to allow it because of prior testimony.
Well, it depends on what the brain injury is. If you have head injury and you have bleeding on the brain that's pushing the brain one way or the other, it would be a subdural. Then a neurosurgeon would come in and try to take that blood away so it doesn't compress the brain.
I just want to say this for educational purposes only.
So that's something that neurosurgeons do to treat head trauma. They can also put in drains into the ventricle of the brain, and that can relieve pressure in the brain because that brain swelling is a bad thing. So those are some of the things neurosurgeons do to treat brain injuries.
Can they remove part of the skull to relieve pressure?
Oh, yes, they can do that. It's called a craniotomy. They can take out part of the skull if they need to.
So there are a number of different steps that a neurosurgeon can take when someone suffers acute brain trauma to try to save the person, isn't there?
Well, the job of any doctor is to try to save a human life if you treat living patients. So certainly a neurosurgeon would evaluate the patient and decide if there's any treatment needed that could improve the patient.
When you've had cases in the past as a medical examiner where there have been issues regarding brain injury, wouldn't you agree that you have sought outside consultation with people who have a higher degree of specialty in brain injury than you?
Sometimes what we do is when we're examining the brain, we can call in for a conference and have a neuropathologist come in and review the brain with us.
And back when you were a medical examiner, you did that on a number of occasions, didn't you?
Yes, that's routine.
The reason why is because there are different specialties in medicine, And some are different and separate than your specialty, correct?
Does anybody find themselves more prone to violence when he speaks?
Of course.
In a neurosurgeon or
She
a
answered
brain
me.
surgeon, it would be a different specialty than yours.
Yes.
And they're focused on the brain, yes?
A neurosurgeon does brain surgery.
And so, how many times in your career do you think that you've assisted the help of neurosurgeons to take a look at
Me
brain
too.
study to help you?
I've never needed to speak with a neurosurgeon to look at a brain. Sometimes we call in neuropathologists, and we have a forensic neuropathology conference where we look at brains with the interns and
Behind.
residents.
How often would you call a neuropathologist?
Maybe once a month we would have a routine conference.
And again, the neuropathologist that's dealing with a
Thank you for the
person's
follow.
brain after they're already died.
Correct.
So it's not a clinical setting or a clinical experience of actually watching the brain at work and seeing the injury as it progresses.
Thank you for the follows.
We don't do neuropathology like that on living people. The person is deceased.
You had an opinion to the jury today, and you said that you believe that Mr. O'Keefe died within 15 minutes.
Yes, I think that process would start within 15 or 20 minutes.
Is that to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, that opinion?
Yes, based on the severity of the injury and the brain swelling.
You're aware that there are numerous level 1 trauma centers around the country that deal with brain injury, right?
Sure.
And the idea is that people suffer all types of brain injury, and if they are given medical attention in a reasonable amount of time, there's a chance they can be saved, yes?
Well, it's possible, but many are so severe that they cause death no matter how fast they can get medical attention.
In fact, every day when people get the right attention or proper attention, they're brought to level 1 trauma centers around this country to try to help them or save them. Isn't that fair to say?
I would hope so.
Do you think?
Sure.
When
That's why she's our
you
auntie.
looked at Mr. O'Keefe's brain, obviously it's after he already expired, correct?
Obviously,
And
yes.
so you didn't have any
Expired.
clinical observation of the progress of his injury that night, did you?
I was not observing him. I did not observe how he got his injury.
When you gave an estimate or you give an opinion about how long he was alive for, are you aware that there's certain tests that are done by neurosurgeons when people are suffering brain injuries, but there's an attempt to save them?
Sure.
Have you ever heard of a Guzman coma score?
Glasgow, you mean?
No, but there's Glasgow, but you've heard of Guzman?
It's called Glasgow Coma Score.
Have you ever seen the assessment that a level 1 trauma center goes through when they're trying to save somebody with a brain injury?
I'm generally familiar with the emergency procedures to save somebody's life.
Have
The one that wants to mispronounce things want to ask her if she's not familiar.
you ever read any statistical studies attempting to
Thank you,
correlate the brain injury with the time somebody would live for?
I'm aware of that, and I see that in my practice of people who have survived brain injuries and die of something else. Then I can look at the brain and understand how the brain can heal or react to injuries.
And
Thank you.
many people who suffer coup contre coup will go into a brain surgeon center, and many of them pass after time, don't they?
Now, every case is different.
Right. Some might live for an hour, hours, weeks, months, or survive the injury. Isn't that fair to say?
It depends on the case.
In this case, you don't have any objective criteria to identify the amount of time Mr. O'Keefe would have lived if he had the appropriate help. Isn't that fair to say?
I don't think it would have been effective because There were massive skull fractures to the base of the skull. And there are cases where the amount of force and energy applied to the head, causing skull fractures, breaking the neurons, causing the brain swelling, despite rapid medical treatment, those people cannot be saved. They can't effectively stop the brain swelling.
Many people can't be saved. Did you know that about 1/3 of them do get saved?
I don't know what you're talking about. 1/3 of everybody has different sorts of injuries. 1/3 of what?
With a clivus fracture, coup contre coup. Are you aware that 1/3 of those patients survive if they get the proper treatment?
It depends on the amount of force.
Okay. Are you aware that a study would show, have you ever read a study by Isaac Wolf on clivus fractures?
No.
Have you read any studies on clivus fractures?
Clivus fractures? Yes, I understand what clivus fractures are. It's a part of the base of the skull.
Okay,
And
And
it
have
depends.
you-
Oops. Okay, go ahead.
please. Did you want to
No,
say?
you go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Have you read any studies that tell you with the proper treatment, despite these potentially catastrophic injuries, that 1/3 of patients can survive?
No, but that's not the case we have here.
And so in this case, I asked if you had any objective criteria. You don't have any objective criteria about the progress of Mr. O'Keefe's wound that can be a basis for you to conclude that he would have died in 15 minutes. Isn't that fair to say?
No, I understand what happens to the brain when it gets that sort of injury. I understand the time course and the physiology. I've seen hundreds of individuals who've had brain injuries. Some survive for a longer period, some die earlier, and it depends on the amount of force and the amount of brain swelling. And in Mr. O'Keefe's case, we had the massive skull fractures in the base of the brain and immediate swelling and subarachnoid and subdural. So he had a large force applied to his head, which caused the brain swelling and the and the progression of the brain stem down through the foramen magnum that stopped the brain. It was a very forceful impact.
You examined his brain after you looked at photographs. You can't tell us objectively when his brain swell started.
It started immediately after impact.
And you can tell us
He says, you can't tell me when the brain swelling started. She's immediately after impact.
what the progress of that brain swell was by looking at his post-mortem photos.
By looking at the postmortem photos and the postmortem examination, I can tell the degree of force from the extensive skull fractures that were present.
What was the degree of force?
It was medium to large.
Well, that's a wide range. What do you mean? Quantify medium
I'll
to
strike
large,
the comment,
please.
ask the question, Mr. Brown.
What does medium to large mean?
Enough to cause a lot of fractures to the skull. He didn't just sit down and lie down.
If he sat down and lied down, he probably wouldn't have fractured his skull, correct?
That's obvious, yes.
Right. And so when you're telling us you can identify that he immediately died or died within 15 minutes, I'm asking you for objective criteria. For you to give that opinion, I'm asking you what objective information you have. And so you said that there was a large amount of force, correct?
Sure, because there were massive skull fractures and there's a lot of energy transmitted to the brain, starts swelling immediately.
How do you know
I'm gonna run to the bathroom because if I end up laughing, I might wet myself.
this wasn't medium force?
I know
not
TMI,
large
but-
force?
It is what it
Because of the
is.
extensive number of skull fractures,
So are you saying it was medium or a large force?
medium to large.
Okay. How much force is that? Can you quantify it?
No,
What other objective criteria do you have to support your opinion that Mr. O'Keefe died within 15 minutes?
with my training and experience of seeing thousands of deceased people from head injuries and knowing some of their clinical course, when they get immediate medical treatment, they don't survive.
But you would agree many do.
Depends on the case.
And in this case, you didn't have any opportunity to observe the progress of Mr. O'Keefe's injury that night, correct?
Judge, you wanna?
I'm going to allow that.
I wasn't there. The body told me what happened to it.
You have no assessment of the development of his brain injury and how much time it took that night, do you?
I do, from understanding the significant skull fractures and the swelling of the brain and the compression of the brainstem that all happened very rapidly because of the amount of force that caused all those skull fractures on the base of the skull that actually then hemorrhaged into his upper eyelids. That's a large amount of force.
Was gross edema found on his brain?
I think it was swollen, yes.
But was that,
Yes.
where did you see that finding?
Well, in order to have the of the brainstem, the brain swells.
Where did you see that finding?
I can't answer that. I just know it from understanding, looking at the pathology.
So at the end result, at some point, Mr. O'Keefe had gross edema.
In order to get the brain stem hemorrhages, the only way you get that is because the brain has swelled. And there's no, after injury, tissue swells, and there's no place for the brain to go when it swells, except down into the natural hole in the bottom of the skull where the spinal cord goes down. So that's where the pressure goes. So that seeing the brainstem herniation tells you that the brain has swollen a lot.
Undoubtedly, but it doesn't tell you when it began to swell or the progress of that swell, does it?
I don't know what you mean.
You see inevitably because of the swelling, there's the suffocation, but when you see that, you don't know when the swelling began or how quickly it progressed. You can't tell that from an autopsy.
Yes, you can, because of the severity of the skull fractures. I know there was a lot of force, and that force applied causes you to go unconscious, then your brain swells. If there was just like one skull fracture, then that's a little bit different. But this was massive skull fractures on the base of the skull. So there's a lot of force applied. So I know because there's a lot of force applied to cause the skull fractures, that the brain would swell rapidly.
You would be unable to identify the rapidity of the swelling if you don't know the amount of force. Isn't that fair to say?
Well, I do know the amount of force because of the amount of skull fractures.
In what you know is, in your words, medium to large force.
Yes.
You've heard of periorbital ecchymosis,
Yes.
and that's sometimes called raccoon eyes.
Well, periorbital ecchymosis just means bleeding and bruising around the eyes.
And you saw the bruising around Mr. O'Keefe's eyes, didn't you, in the photographs?
Well, it wasn't bruising caused by blunt force trauma to the eye. It was bleeding in the upper eyelid because the plates above the eye and the base of the skull were fractured by the brain hitting it. So, and that's a result of basilar skull fractures and not the application of force directly to the eye.
Would you agree it takes a few hours for the bleeding to accumulate in the person's eyes?
No, as soon as you break the skull bones and the heart's pumping, the blood comes out of those injuries. It starts to accumulate right away. It starts within minutes, you can see it.
So you would disagree with the suggestion that it takes at least 1 to 2 hours for that bleeding to occur in the eyes. You disagree with that?
I do disagree with that. It starts immediately.
Do you have any studies that you've relied on or literature or support for that?
I understand the physiology of what happens when you get those skull fractures and the density of the blood vessels. And if your heart is pumping, you pump the blood out those broken blood vessels into this small area above the eye. And it can happen within minutes.
Do you have any studies or literature to support that?
That's my training experience. I can't cite you a particular article at this time. I could certainly go look it up and bring it to you.
Okay. Let me ask you questions about the wounds to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head.
Go
Yes.
bring it
Do
to
you see a
you.
linear abrasion?
Yes, vertical lines, yes.
Now, would you characterize this as a classic wound caused by falling backwards and landing on your head?
What do you mean every wound is different?
Every wound is different?
Sure, every person's different, every way you get injured is different.
And so if somebody falls backward on their head and suffers the basal fracture, the wound from your perspective can look different.
It depends on the impacting surface.
Wounds on the same surface, say two people fell on the same surface, could they have different wounds on the back of the head if they suffered the same injury?
In theory, if they fell, if they rotated their body, if you could reproduce something exactly, then you would see the same wound patterns.
This wound pattern is typical of falling backwards on a hard surface, isn't it?
We know it's from falling backwards and striking something hard.
Can the frozen ground be hard?
A frozen ground can be hard, but it doesn't fit the pattern in this injury.
We'll get to that, but is it
okay.
hard enough to cause a basal fracture?
It can cause a skull fracture.
Thank you, Rachel.
The frozen ground is different than a sheet of ice, right? It's not smooth and flat like a sheet of ice, is it?
It could be, I guess.
Okay. You mentioned there's some granular patterns in this wound.
Yes,
didn't you?
yes.
The area in front of 34 Fairview, the frozen ground, do you know if there was any impediments in the lawn that was frozen?
In the what? Oh, the lawn?
Yeah, yeah, sorry.
Yes, I saw the scene photographs of when the snow was removed, and it was like winter lawn grass. So it was some green, some brown that was pushed down, and like straw that was going different directions, which wouldn't give you that pattern.
Did you see the exact area where Mr. O'Keefe last moved?
I saw that general area, and there were a lot of photographs,
Well,
yes.
You say general area. Can you tell us that you saw photographs of the spot where Mr. O'Keefe was lying when he was found?
Yes, that general area.
Could you see the ground where his
I
head
agree,
was?
Lucky.
Can you identify that?
Yes, with the scene investigation, they
Mine.
shoveled the snow off of that area.
And you had never had a chance to go out to that scene yourself, did you?
No, I just looked at all the photographs.
You cannot see what's under the grass and the dirt, can you?
Well,
Do you mean after a snowplow's gone by and a leaf blower was used? Yeah. Don't forget to include that, Hank.
dirt's under the grass.
Well, do you know if there's any rocks or impediments or bumps?
It was a smooth surface covered with grass.
It was a smooth surface. The front lawn was a smooth
It was a
surface?
flat surface
Flat.
covered with grass.
Okay, and do you know what was under the grass, whether there was any pebbles, rocks, debris
I didn't see any.
from the photo?
Correct.
But you don't have any firsthand
No.
knowledge that exact area where he ended, what the turf was like, do you?
I saw photographs of that lawn where they removed his body from.
So you're relying solely on the photographs, is that fair to say?
Correct.
Do you know if Mr. O'Keefe was wearing anything that could cause abrasions when he landed to cause that scraping pattern in addition to the linear abrasion?
He did have a baseball hat on, but that would not cause that pattern.
The area of the abrasions, is that in the area of the level of where a baseball hat would be on the back of somebody's head?
It could be.
If somebody hits the ground and falls backwards, can they slide?
And if they're on an incline,
What if they're thrust?
well, if you fall backwards and you fall backwards on an incline, your body might move.
What if you fall backwards on flat ground? Does the body, can it move after it falls?
Are you asking if it
Not
bounces?
really, maybe a little. If from the momentum of the impact, it might move slightly, but not really.
So when a person falls backwards and lands, you don't think the head has any room for movement?
Not significant.
Well, not significantly, maybe just a quarter inch, half inch.
No, it's possible.
And did you see the scrapes around the wound of Mr. O'Keefe's head?
Of course I saw them, yes.
And they're all within, what, about an inch?
What are you describing, what part? Are you describing the tearing, the laceration of the scalp or the vertical abrasions?
The vertical abrasions,
There were maybe an inch, inch and a half.
inch and a half? Do you think that if someone fell backwards and landed on their head, they could move an inch and a half?
Well, he landed on something that had a ridge on it to cause the laceration in the scalp. And then with a little bit of movement, those vertical scratches were caused by some kind of like pebbly-like surface.
You mentioned that the orbital bones were broken and you had opined that it was caused by the brain. Do you agree that a brain is very soft, consistent with, for example, tofu?
Oh, gross. What do you mean? It is soft.
Is it that soft? Is that the texture of it?
Well, it depends on what kind of tofu you have.
Okay.
They're laughing at you, not with you,
think
Hank.
that the orbital could have broken when the break on the back of the head split the skull and then would cause the orbital break instead of the brain?
The orbital plate fractures, if you look at the base of the skull after you take the brain out, you can see the fractures go up from the back to the front into the orbital plate. Sometimes when you fall backwards, the brain can also slap those
She did.
orbital plates and cause some damage, but I could trace the fractures from the point of impact along the base of the skull to the part of the skull over the eyes.
Right?
Do you think the base of the skull break, when it separates, could have caused those orbital fractures?
I don't understand your question.
When Mr. O'Keefe incurred that head injury,
Yes.
the basal fracture, do you think that the pressure, the damage from that basal fracture, the separation, could have caused the orbital breaks in his eyes?
Well, the fracture of the plates above the eye, when the blood is still pumping, there's a space there where the blood can come down into the upper eyelid.
So you described the brain as causing that break. I'm asking you, could it have been from the basal
Asked
fracture,
and
the
answered.
skull fracture?
Yes, the fracture that it was caused by the impact to the back of the head, radiating to the front of the base of the skull.
So when you told us on direct it was from the brain that caused those fractures, was that just a summary, or is that to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Well, sometimes the brain can also, in a fall, flap and hit those, but in this case, I could also see that the skull fracture started at the back and came to the front, but it could also be contributed to by the brain hitting those delicate bones.
I guess my question is, when you've provided the opinions generally of what you believe and what you've seen, are these general opinions, or are they actually specific opinions based on the facts of this case?
They are opinions based on my examination of this case, but all that's based on my 40 years of training and experience.
But when you told us about the brain causing those orbital fractures, you would agree with me, at least now anyways, that it very likely could have been the basal fracture that caused those breaks.
They're both.
It could have been both?
Sure,
It could have been just the basal fracture.
that's possible.
I believe they do.
When you offered the opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, had you considered the basal fracture as the source of those breaks?
Of course.
Is there a reason you didn't share that with us and you just said it was the brain?
I had no reason not to share it.
Okay. Was there any depressed fracture to Mr. O'Keefe's skull?
No.
Can you tell us a little bit about a depressed fracture? Depressed fracture is different than what we saw with Mr. O'Keefe, isn't it?
A depressed fracture is when something fractures the skull and then pushes the skull and moves the skull inward. This just had a fracture, but it didn't move the skull inward.
And
She didn't agree to dog bites. However, she did agree to animal bites.
You've seen depressed fractures in your practice over 40 years, did you say?
Of course,
In those 40 years, depressed fractures can happen from sharp objects,
sure,
pointed objects.
sure.
If someone hit a person in the back of the head with enough force, with like a hammer, for example, that could leave a depressed skull fracture, couldn't it?
Certainly, you can hit somebody on the head with a hammer and cause the fracture, and then the continued force will move that fracture into the brain.
Correct.
There was no depressed skull fracture in this case, was there?
Correct.
You gave some opinions today about you gave some opinions about wounds on Mr. O'Keefe's arm. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that.
Sure.
Could we have that photo brought up, please? Do you see all of those superficial abrasions?
Yes, I see patterned injuries.
Right. Would you agree that they're superficial abrasions?
Yes, they go along the skin surface.
How many punctures would you identify in that photograph?
Let's see, there may be some punctures like around the elbow, consistent with the teeth puncturing. Most of them are the teeth scraping along the skin.
If you've missed any of these days, I have them up on my YouTube. I put them up every day after the lives.
I'm not going to ask you what you believe the cause was. I'm going to ask you just about the wound. How many punctures did you see?
Well, this doesn't show.
That's on purpose, Adria.
There are other photographs which show
You
more.
cannot
of them,
show it.
But there's the little dot-like areas. You could call an area of skin puncture.
Can you tell us from this photograph how many punctures you would say are in that photo?
I didn't count them.
Well, did you suggest that there was more than one puncture on that wound?
I think I see more than one, yes.
Pardon me?
I see more than one on there.
Okay, could you give us a count of how many punctures you see?
Well, without looking at all the photos, I couldn't give you a correct number.
Okay. You've written a report, haven't you?
Did I what?
You wrote a report,
I did.
and in your
CW.
report, you describe many of those abrasions as punctures, don't you?
Yes.
And a puncture isn't just a scratch. A puncture is a penetration of the skin, isn't it?
Yeah, a point-like penetration.